Hey guys, Mitt Perrin here. Merry Christmas. I thought going live over the holidays actually made sense. A lot of people are off with family, routines are different, and it's usually one of the few times in the year where you can actually pause and reflect. Today isn't meant to be anything formal. If you're stealing a few minutes away from your family or you're just relaxing and want something familiar on in the background, this is really just a chance to catch up and say hi. Why did going live over the holidays really feel right this year? As I said, it's just one of the times and chances where you get to really reflect on what's going on, and see what you really want to be doing for the year ahead. Um, Again, just saying, like, it isn't meant to be formal. We're just going to kind of talk about what's going on. So if I could kind of describe this year in one sentence, I would describe it as rapidly evolving and being dynamic, I guess. There was a lot of uncertainty and volatility in the market. And as a result, people have had to navigate that in different ways. Whether that was looking to reduce expenses because they didn't know where their next paycheck was going to come from, they had to kind of be able to get by, or whether that was trying to pick up a second job to get that income coming in. Obviously, from a global macro perspective, we had an election, we had a new prime minister come in, our Canadian government took time off, which left a lot of us in limbo trying to figure out what's next. And then as a result of our friends down south with Donald Trump there, we had a lot of companies making quite a bit of changes that was unfortunate for a lot of people. So because of that, what we had is a lot of people wondering, like, is my job safe? Am I going to be okay? And then we had some of the big telecoms, some of the banks let go of people. And so people really went into pause mode, and it made everybody else who had their job kind of really be worried and sitting on the sidelines. And obviously, with all the tariffs and stuff that were implemented throughout the year and volatility, that was stuff that was in the news, we saw over the course of this entire year that it was like, what kind of year really, like, was it? It was a year of boom drops, boom, really high emotions. You had stock market on April 8th, 9th, 10th kind of crash down and then kind of recover back up, but it really cut asset prices in time. So a lot of people who were investing in the market were kind of like, oh my God, like every week there's a new news cycle, there's a new thing that's being said. This is affecting my investments, and it's affecting your mental health as well, right? Obviously, when people look at their mix of portfolio, what kind of stuff that they're investing in, they're saying, what, does this make sense for me? You're logging in, you see your app, and you're saying, boom, down 10%, down 20%. It's quite gut wrenching. And obviously, that's where you should always be speaking with a professional, building out a wealth plan and a portfolio that can help you stomach those issues. But obviously, with great risk of investing in the equity markets, you get that volatility. And so with all that volatility in place, it made people look towards alternatives. And I think that's been something that people always look at, right? Like, you have a mix of investors who invest in real estate because they know it's something that they can touch, feel, there's cash flow. You have your recurring return. Yes, maybe it isn't as sexy where AI is in play and it's going to go up 40% overnight, but it will keep chugging along because you're not going to have those drops either. So for us, where all this came into play is that we had, obviously from our perspective of raising capital for Foundation Capital by Real Estate Trust, our best year yet. We've raised more capital this year than we had raised the last 2 years of our business. So honestly, hats off to PB and Jeff and myself, I guess, for doing that, and obviously to all our investors for that trust and support. And we're looking forward to continue to execute on it. And I guess as a part of that, there is a lot of different emotions that run when we have to take in consideration like global environments. So basically, with all this happening in the market, again, the banks were a lot more conservative throughout the year. Lenders were conservative. People were just waiting on sidelines until sort of there's more certainty. Obviously, that certainty still hasn't been obtained in Canada or in the US. From a perspective of who are the new large employers coming into Canada, who's going to, create new jobs, that's going to provide stability that, hey, if the banks do let go of people and things like that, what's going to spur the economy? And right now what we're seeing is more of like the upper, lower, and middle class kind of just being wiped out by rising costs. And unfortunately, the government's doing, I guess, what it's doing. But we need to be able to attract more companies to this country if we want to have people to be high earners and then start deploying their capital into real estate markets. So in Canada throughout the year, we had a bunch of a few interest rate cuts, which obviously variable interest rate holders probably put up their hands and said, yay, thank you. Funny enough, myself, I am also a variable rate holder for my primary residence. So, I started off that way because it worked out well for me. And then obviously I got killed a little bit as rates went up. But then as they came back down, I got to be a beneficiary of that. Well, obviously, if you've been in the multifamily apartment building space, you probably noticed that there's been a bit of activity this year, but it's been mainly larger players shuffling assets around. A lot of the smaller deals and the stuff where, with the trust that our investors put on us, we had to execute and look at various opportunities. I want to say earlier this year, we were pretty ready to pull the trigger and just quickly jump into deals. What we started to notice was the market had softened and was continuing to soften. It wasn't actually showing sort of signs of strength. So we're actually said, like, you know what, maybe we have to just keep executing on the deals that we have, acquire the stuff that makes sense where we're buying it. It's going to hit our targeted returns for our investors of that 7% annual cash flow distributed on a monthly basis, and where we can get turnovers and upside and get that 8% appreciation. And so we had to be more careful with the deals that we wanted to pursue. And we're obviously constantly looking at deals right now as well. And so for us, it was kind of hey, we raised a lot of money this year, we're acquiring our deals, and we need to continue to be able to hit our turnovers. And it's a little bit of, okay, now we're going to kind of put our acquisitions in a little bit of let's call it a waiting period, and let's continue to optimize the existing assets that we have and pick assets that will keep being able to rinse and repeat this, buy older apartment buildings, renovate them, push the rents up, refinance and repeat that process and generate that return for our investors. And so in different parts of our business, it was sort of, hey, we're putting this on pause. Obviously, on the capital raising sides, we've been really building that. You've probably seen that we've raised the most money we have this year. We launched a bunch of Facebook ads. We launched a lot of social media. Obviously, one of the challenges for me this year was getting back in front of the camera. I'm sure everyone who's in this space, who's raising capital, and either if it's themselves or their staff who are coming onto social media and doing it, they find it really tough. It's not, when you went to school or you went to work, it wasn't something that you were thinking like, hey, this is what my future was going to be. But it's a skill and a trait that everyone has to learn to do. And I think obviously that's where our world and economy is kind of headed. And for us, it was building and working on that, I think, as a team, and then keeping ourselves accountable for that. It was good. We obviously, as we raise this much money, we do feel more responsibility. We have more families relying on us when they're getting invested. And so we have to kind of think like, hey, how do we continue to generate these returns? And that's where a lot of this year has gone towards some of the other planning aspects where it isn't necessarily visible to the public per se, in which where we're working with architects and designers to be able to create additional units in the apartment buildings, and looking at what is it that we can do to keep spurring that. So We looked across all the cities that we're involved with, whether that's Hamilton, Ingersoll, Sarnia, London, St. Thomas, Chatham, and just said, hey, this is the listed inventory of assets that we have. We've talked about doing this before, but maybe let's really figure it out and price it out, see where the economics and math make sense. And then we looked at what are the different kind of grants and opportunities available in each of these markets. So that really allowed us to identify a lot of opportunities and get clarity with a lot of cities so that we can continue to generate our return and exceed our returns year after year, especially as we continue to raise more capital, acquire more buildings, and continue to scale our systematic approach. A big thing that we saw as well is that Canadians are hurting. Like they are, there's people who are making maybe $25 an hour, maybe a little bit more. And that gives them a 70K, anywhere between a 70 to 80K salary, but you can't really survive on that anymore. And so people were really looking at alternative housing solutions, whether they, go rent a new luxury apartment, which again, a lot of them said, hey, this doesn't make sense. And that's where we've seen rents really be dropping across the board this year, or do they go into an older apartment building? Maybe it's a couple $100 cheaper and it makes sense. But the craziest part that we saw is that there's a space for a lot of divorcees or single people who are older that just really need things that are more affordable, where it allows them to save some money and be able to get themselves back on their feet. And I think if you're a Canadian who's wondering, like, why is everything feeling so expensive? Why can't I really seem to get ahead? And the unfortunate part is, like, all these costs are going up, and the only way you're going to stay ahead of it is by getting your money invested and having that pay you distributions or dividends, and using that to help supplement your lifestyle. It's definitely not something that is going to be doable by. It's definitely not something that's going to be doable by just your salaries. We saw a lot of decrease in wage growth or lack of wage growth throughout the board, and so people who also have been let go from jobs and they're finding positions are seeing that they're making tens of thousands of dollars less than what they were maybe at their previous role. So they're getting invested into these assets so that they can create that extra additional cash flow to basically supplement their lifestyle. But on top of that, the bigger piece that people are finding is that, like, okay, well, now I'm divorced or separated, or I'm new to the country. I've trying to get ahead. Clearly, life at $25 an hour is already tough. Okay, if I want to save a couple $100, I'm going to go live in an apartment building or smaller apartment building. And that's honestly where we've been finding our niches, creating additional units that people can afford. Let them save that couple $100 a month. Let them stack that couple $100 a month. And it's going to allow them to be able to have that wealth so that they can go out and buy their home, or be able to not be sweating on a month-to-month basis, and that they're going to be in a better financial position. So that's really a very large aspect, I want to say, that for a lot of people, we saw a lot of demand. So when we said, hey, like, we're talking to the counties, we're talking to the other municipalities, and they're saying, like, do you have rent closer to, the affordability rates we're at the CMHC? We've got these grants, we've got these programs. And we said, you know what, like, obviously we're in this business to make money. But half the time we feel like social workers at times, because we're solving people's issues. Obviously there's a lot of challenges with that. It's a very emotional business. This is where people live. And sometimes when people are going through struggles, it's a hard time for them to be able to share that. And so we said, you know what, like, we got to make this easier for people, man. Like, it's if you're going to keep relying on the government to come save you, or somebody else to come save you, it's not really going to work. But again, instead of being part of the problem and just having high rents that people can't afford, we said, you know what, let's make units that fit the needs of the people, and it can make economic sense for us to be able to make money as well. And that's where we've been launching, creating these additional units out of more affordable rates. And that's kind of where we feel the most responsibility this year, I would say, is trying to find a solution for the social housing kind of program that exists, while also being able to be accountable to our investors and make money for them. So I think that's been a really a positive situation for us this year, and it gave us that clarity. And I think 2026 is going to be a real banger for all of those. And a large decision that carried more weight than it would have a few years ago for us is really being able to say no to deals. I'm sure anyone who's been in the multifamily space a couple of years back saw that as deals came up, there were so many bidders, so many people in the market. So I think decision area that we find very valuable in our business right now is just the ability to say no. And not tying up time into things where we're like, you know what, there's not enough meat on the bones for this to make sense for ourselves or even for our investors, right? Like we still have deals where we do it ourselves, and those are ones that require a lot more work. And I'll tell you, like, you know, we're trying to address some of these buildings which are literal war zones. You know, like it's very rough. People are facing some really mental health challenges, substance abuse challenges, and there's been fires and other issues and people breaking in, standoffs with police. And it's honestly the ability to not be fazed by all of that is what we've been fortunate enough to be able to go through this year and not be impacted, but then look at the human point and try to address those things to make sure that all the tenants that are happy with. And so, you know, all that being said, the part of the business that required more of our attention than expected this year was trying to find that solution for housing for some of these tenants that are going through that difficulty, working with and hand in hand with some of the other social programs to help people who are homeless or facing homelessness address their problems and get them housed or get them the help that they need. And honestly, at times, it's frustrating because obviously we are a private business that can kind of execute and move really quickly, but situations that drain the most energy for us this year is a lot of, you know, going back and forth, waiting on approvals from said government, and everything isn't explicit and clear. And that's obviously because there's a lot of case by case situations. And I'm hopeful that, you know, as we continue to grow as a society, we're going to have some more clarity, and it's not going to be, you know, things dragged in through red tape and a lot more execution. And I think for us, being able to reference a lot of the projects that we've been doing has been really helpful. I know some of the submissions that we've done towards getting our properties intensified, we've provided that information of like the real reality that Canadians are facing, and that's really helped that. And for us, obviously, it's also staying positive. Sometimes we feel like we want to keep growing more than where we're at, but you know, when you take a time like now and you're reflecting, like, holy crap, we've raised over 100, like more than what we had raised last year in the course of this year. It's pretty amazing to look at and be proud of. Yeah, and it's I guess going back to all of that, I think this year it's been important for us to know that, you know, sometimes things will take longer or cost more than planned, and that's where we've been pretty good and diligent on adding those buffers in, having those forecasts, having different ways that we're going to generate returns for investors has been great. And then personally, it's also been like, you know, take that time, get that time in the gym, take that time for family, because, you know, some things will just need to go through their course of nature, right? And it's going through the motion. Sometimes, yes, you're going to apply to the city, they're going to say no, but then they're going to give you the feedback that you need. And it's okay to take that time slowly and reflect and implement those changes on your other stuff. And I think one of the things is our biggest items that we're not really going to be repeating as much this year is really getting, you know, people aligned on what it is that's happening, right? You don't want to force anyone, whether it's a tenant or investor, into a lease or into investing. Unfortunately, we haven't really had that. But some of the stuff that we faced is tenants who were leasing without seeing the unit, and then obviously being upset afterwards based on noise, or, you know, they had a different expectation, especially as they came out of town, and we felt bad. And you know, we are very accommodating to people. We're very understanding of their situations, and so sometimes we will let a tenant in before the lease starts, or we're pretty accommodating with them. And so I think for us, a lot of it from tenanting perspective has gone back to, okay, let's just stick to our principles. Let's stick to our leasing criteria of, your income's got to meet a certain threshold. Yeah, they can be getting government supports and whatnot, but do they have a history of paying that? And vetting those tenants even more. I think especially in a market like right now where rents are relatively like stable, or they're hitting a floor, and they've come down. There's a lot of mobility happening between tenants, and I'm sure there's people getting offered cash for keys and other things like that. So what we are looking to do is make sure that we are not just taking anyone that's maybe going to stop paying rent or have those issues. But in that same light, we are proactively always approaching tenants who are behind to get caught up on their rents, figure out payment plans and solutions, and maybe also find them alternative housing, because maybe what they're in right now doesn't really make sense for them. And what's crazy is, for us as a business, we've focused a lot of time on, okay, we've got to raise more capital, we've got to get in front of financial advisors, we got to get in front of exempt market dealers to help sell our stuff. And honestly, guys, the course of this year has been that we've been doing social media for the past number of years. It's how we've grown our business. Not the most amazing person on social media, I think, in comparison. I don't make the most prettiest videos, but I think we are a wealth of knowledge, and we do get information out there. And especially on our calls one-on-one, people can really feel that. And they're able to see the actual touch and feel of the properties with us. And as a result, it didn't really matter that, whether we were really super large in comparison to some of the other REITs. It's kind of like just knowing what we're doing to really mitigate those issues, where we're really hands-on involved. We have multiple strategies. We are actually still involved in the properties on a day-to-day basis in regards to strategy to turn them over. And that really is, I guess, a differentiating factor. And for investors, and it didn't really matter that we weren't being sold by financial advisors yet and stuff like that. And there's metrics that some of these large institutions have for raising capital, and we said, you know what, it matters, but it also doesn't matter, because we're just going to triple down 10x on our raising from our retail strategy, which is get straight to the people through social media, connect with them, and get them invested and grow the business. And again, the more people that come and get invested allows us to take on more opportunities in the market and do well. And I think what went right with that is that by us doing a lot of this marketing, we do save costs from raising capital, which again is a benefit for our fund investors. And us improving on that, again, is going to be our competitive advantage to our peers. And people might have noticed that it's been going well, but I think we've not cracked the code, but we've been working on the code towards continuing to hit the retail market with that people probably didn't notice. And I think our ability to just constantly just work on turnovers is really what's allowed us to have that discipline and beat the hype of what we're doing, these larger acquisitions in the GTA or something like that, or show off flashy cars and whatnot. I think I'm driving around a rental Dodge Caravan, and that's just my own personal life choices, but it's not really of interest to me. I think for me, I get a lot of joy actually out of hearing all the stories our investors have of where they get to spend time and family from the work that we get to do. And then I got to take my mom to Asia for her 60th birthday for a couple of weeks. And, PB and Jeff were able to hold it down with her staff. And it was great to be there and be able to show my mom an experience of a lifetime. And honestly, that's the whole point of all of this, right, of real estate investing. And I think it's been very good for us that way. And I think that's what we all kind of have to think about as we are spending time with our families during the holiday period, is like, are we doing the things that matter most to us to get what we truly want in life? So at the end of the day, I'm sure everyone wants the highest return possible, which is always important. But I think what's also important is, like, are you feeling like comfortable as you're going to sleep at night? Are you getting, you can invest in the stock market and see stuff drop 30% or bump 30%, and that's great. But some people can't handle those swings. And even for us, we said, you know what, you can't really be taking gamble plays the same way we were when we were probably much younger, doing some of our private stuff. Again, not REIT related. REIT related has a exact strategy, exact asset class, and identifying that. And I think, especially as we continue to carry the weight and responsibility for our investors, we implement that methodology and what kind of assets that we pick. And that's been great, because even as it relates to our personal stuff, as we look at personal acquisitions and things like that, again, not really our main area of focus. It's just sometimes there's deals that are, let's call it, in real rough war zones where like it's super low rents, but the price is too good to give away. We will pick up those deals to just keep them for our side portfolio. But you got to make sure that it isn't intrusive and taking away from your day-to-day business and time. So cutting out distractions, I guess, all in all, is what to be said. And sometimes it's not about the total money return. And I think we've done a good job saying no to a bunch of opportunities this year, and reflecting on that. And I think an item that we all got to do, myself, PV, and Jeff, is we kind of got back together, and we do our daily check-ins, we do our monthly check-ins, we do our all of that. But we did like hey, let's take a step back, look at the business, and reflect. And we got to really review a lot of kind of our decision making, how we want to continue to make decisions going forward based on our conversations with other industry peers. What is working for us and what are we going to continue to do. And so I think we've been taking all those lessons that have been positive, that we want to be implementing, and our successes there, and then taking away from our learnings which didn't make sense, where we said, you know what, this doesn't make sense. And so it's important. I think anyone who's listening, anyone who's watching this afterwards, saying, you know what, I started this year, I want to invest in real estate, I again invest in real estate. Really write down why. One of the exercises I do personally is I say, these are all the different things I've done in my life. This is what's worked for me. This is what didn't work for me. This is what I liked. This is what I didn't like. And then I've really filtered it down to like, these are all the points in time where I actually enjoyed doing my work, and these are things that I really liked focusing on. This is where I'm really good at. This is where I excel. And like, let me double down on that. And then similarly, it's like, these are the things I've invested in the past. And anyone who knows me knows, like, I've done and tried everything under the moon. I just always like to put a little bit of money into different things, whether it's crypto ATM, drop shipping tea, drop shipping toothbrush, and toothpaste, before Amazon delivery to your door was available. So I've tried different things over the years, and it's, I think, what allows us also in our business to iterate is say, hey, what makes sense and what doesn't. And I think people have to reflect on their portfolio and say, look, I might be invested in XYZ stocks, XYZ private REITs, XYZ real estate. What was the purpose of me getting into these items? Are those items still why I'm still in it, or have they already done what they can do? And maybe it makes sense for me to liquidate these and redeploy this elsewhere. And so you're not stressing about when is the market going to recover, or when is the market going to recover, and instead put it to something where you're going to get that consistent return. And then you get your ultimate goal, which is you get to spend time with family, travel with your partner, etc. And you have that cash coming in, and you're not worried about, oh my God, is my tenant going to pay, or am I going to have another leak or another roof repair, or how much damage the tenant do when they turn it over. It's like a lot of people keep forgetting that, like, this wasn't meant to be a second job for them. And that's why you work with professionals like ourselves or someone else to get your wealth up by investing in real estate through a real estate private REIT or a public REIT, or whatever vehicle that makes sense for you. And I think that's been good for us as well. Just knowing that, and honestly, a lot of the conversations this year with people has been that. And I'm sure at our investor social, it's always great when we do one-on-one calls with investors, but the investor socials, that really comes to highlight how much people really value that. They get us, just focus on their business, have their money working for them, or they get to take time off from work, spend time with family because of health concerns or whatnot, and they know they're still got money coming in. And it's been great being able to be that kind of partner for them. And honestly, that's the kind of partner investors that we appreciate, where they understand that, look, we are not, we are growing, we are learning. We obviously have all our learning lessons and knowledge and know how to execute, but we're always trying new things. We're trying social media, and we're trying to do it in a cost-efficient manner so that we can maximize return for our investors. And honestly, this year it's been great. We've had investors send in suggestions, read our newsletters, give us feedback, help us with investor testimonials or chatting with other investors on our behalf to kind of talk about their experience with us. So honestly, that's the kind of stuff that's really helped us throughout the year. And I want to say all three of us this year have really focused on our health as well. And I think that's something important that people need to always remember. It's not about just maximizing your return. You want to make sure that you're not negatively impacting your health. Make sure you're getting your workouts in. Make sure you're eating a little bit right. Obviously, enjoy yourself during the holidays. You can live from Christmas to New Year's, but make sure from New Year's to Christmas you're taking care of yourself. All right, it's it's one of those things. It's just being consistent effectively is what's important, and keeping yourself accountable. And I think one of the great things is because there's the three of us and we're doing these newsletters and checking with investors, it's allowed us to really build more habits and be more consistent. And I want to say this year is probably the year that I've taken the most amount of steps and hit the most number of workouts in a long number of years, right? I've been able to build up a lot of strength physically, which again, nothing related to real estate or why you're watching this. But again, that's also allowed us to, myself, PB, Jeff, working out, training together, allows us then check in and be like, hey, what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And, we check in early mornings, late at nights, and then be able to get back to investors. That's why some of you guys who are emailing or messaging us and then getting a response at midnight or 1 a.m. when you're sending it to us is because we're up, we see it, and we say, hey, okay, cool, we'll get back to you. And I think building those habits and finding the right people who can align you with that is what makes sense. And that's honestly what we're pretty happy about. And it's been really good. What we're looking to basically double down over the course of next year is really, again, you're going to see a lot of that from all the work we've done this year. Is there's going to be a bunch of properties where we're going to be really intensifying. A lot more units are going to be created in these buildings. So I guess investors, look out for your share unit prices. We're going to have a bunch of acquisitions that are happening. And again, it's going to be in line with what we're doing. Buy the existing building, turn over existing units, renovate them, rent them out, but also create additional units within the buildings. So a lot of that is what we are doing. We're going with what we're good at and just scaling that quite a bit. And again, we're focusing on the core markets that we're in. So again, we're looking at a lot of stuff in the London and surrounding market where we already own property, London, Chatham, St. Thomas. We are not really looking at opening up a brand new market. It doesn't really make sense for us. And what winning effectively looks like us because of all this is us growing, doubling our building count throughout the year, throughout next year, and hitting and exceeding our target returns for our investors. And so we're going to be doing more of these social media outreaches so people know what's going on for Christmas. And throughout, obviously, if you're reading our newsletters, those have been going out this year I want to say like at least a couple times a week. If you're in our Facebook group, you've got direct access to us there as well. And so all in all, guys, that's kind of what's this year's been as like kind of a wrap, right? And I just want to kind of say, thanks to Jeff, PB, and the rest of our team at Foundation Capital for helping us get where we have this year, and along with all of the investors. We really couldn't have done it without you. And if you're, thinking like, oh man, 2025 went by, I didn't get invested into real estate. How can I get started? What can I do? Honestly, it all takes one leap. I'm not saying go out and buy an apartment building. I'm not saying go out and buy a condo. Don't necessarily do anything drastic per se, but it's much easier to take action, whether it's buying a public REIT, whether it's just shooting us a DM, getting invested with us. That's really going to help you get your foot into the door. And it's it's making the small steps progress, right? You don't have to go in and, retire the next day off of investing in real estate. It's a slow and steady game. And, that's what I would say for anyone who's saying like, what, I'm not achieving where I'm achieving. Review everything that you've kind of done thus far and look to implement those changes so that you are successful going forward. I think that's it for me today, guys. I believe Jeff and PV and I will maybe shoot another live together like this where you guys can join and ask more questions. Maybe over the next few days. I know it's Christmas Day, so a lot of people are tied up with family, but hopefully you've enjoyed the Christmas reflections that I've had to share about, real estate, life. And, the long game for us is we want to keep providing all this for our investors, provide this housing needed for the tenants, and be able to participate in that by being the asset managers ourselves. So if you have any questions, you want me to cover stuff on another live or another video, leave a comment below. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for your support. Enjoy your times with your family. Spending time with your family and loved ones is the most important thing you can do this time of year. Obviously, making money is what allows us to do a lot of that, but it isn't the be all end all. So thank you guys, and see you next time.